My name is Sophia Reyes. I'm 32 years old. On the morning of April 14th, I received a phone call from a woman I had never spoken to before. She introduced herself as the new owner of my grandmother's house. She was calling because she had found something while clearing out the attic. A metal box, locked, with my name written on it in my grandmother's handwriting. My grandmother had been moved into a memory care facility 6 weeks earlier. The house had been sold by my mother, her daughter and legal guardian, while my grandmother was still alive. While I was living in another state, working 2 jobs, sending money home when I could, under the impression that the house was safe. It was not safe. But my grandmother had known it might not be. And she had prepared for exactly this possibility, years before anyone in my family understood what was coming. What was in that box took me 4 months to fully understand and 8 months to act on. What happened after I acted on it is the reason I am sitting here telling you this story. If you've ever had something taken from you by someone who was supposed to protect it, stay with me. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. This is the full story. My grandmother, Lucia Reyes, was born in Guadalajara in 1941. She came to California in 1963 with my grandfather, Ernesto, 2 suitcases, and a skill set that translated across borders. She was a seamstress of real precision, and she had a client base established within a year of arrival through word of mouth alone. Ernesto worked in construction. Together they built what they called la base, the foundation, a savings account that grew slowly. A small apartment, then a slightly larger one. And in 1978, the house, 3441, Flores Street. A 3-bedroom craftsman in a neighborhood that was working class in 1978, and had become something considerably more valuable by the time this story takes place. Lucia and Ernesto bought it for $62,000. They paid it off in 1991. Ernesto died in 2004. Lucia stayed. She kept her sewing clients until she was in her late 70s. She kept the garden, tomatoes, herbs, roses she had planted the year they moved in. She kept the house the way you keep something you have understood, from the beginning, is irreplaceable. She had 2 children. My mother, Carmen, and my uncle Roberto. Carmen married young, had me at 22, divorced at 26, remarried at 32, divorced again at 38. She moved through life with the restless energy of someone who is always starting over. She also had, since early adulthood, a relationship with money that could be described most accurately as desperate. Not criminal, or not obviously criminal, until later. Just constantly short, constantly borrowing, constantly restructuring debts that didn't quite add up. My grandmother bailed her out several times over the years. Small amounts, then larger ones. Carmen called it borrowing. She rarely paid it back in full. Roberto had moved to Texas in 1999 and built a stable, quiet life there. He came back for holidays. He and Carmen had always been careful around each other in the way of siblings who have chosen different paths and know better than to examine the gap directly. I grew up between my parents' various households and my grandmother's house. 3441, Flores Street was the constant. The place that smelled like her cooking and her roses and the particular oil she used on her sewing machine. The place where I knew where everything was kept, because I had been going there my entire life. When I was 26, I took a job offer in Portland. I had been working in accounting at a small firm, and a larger firm in Sacramento had been acquired by a Portland company, and they asked me to come along. The money was better. The opportunity was real. I told Lucia before I told anyone else. She sat across from me at her kitchen table and looked at me for a long moment. "Go," she said. "I'll be here. I'll come back," I said. "I know you will," she said. "But go first. Build something." I left in August of that year. I sent her letters. She preferred letters to phone calls, said they were more thoughtful, and I called every Sunday. I came back at Christmas and in the summers when I could manage it. What I did not know when I left was that my mother had already begun a process that would take 4 years to fully reveal itself. The first sign came in the form of a question. It was 2019. I was on the phone with Lucia, our Sunday call, and she mentioned, almost in passing, that Carmen had asked her to sign some papers. What kind of papers? I asked. Something about her being able to help me if I need it. She explained it. I didn't understand all of it. Did you sign? A pause. I signed something, she said. She said it was just in case. After I hung up, I called my uncle Roberto. He hadn't heard about any papers. Neither of us knew what had been signed or what it meant. I called Carmen. She told me she had arranged a power of attorney. That Lucia was getting older and needed someone who could manage her affairs. That she was the closest family member geographically, and it only made sense. I should have been included in that conversation, I said. You live in Portland, she said. This is a practical arrangement. I was 28. I was not an attorney. I did not fully understand what a power of attorney meant in practice. I understood that it was a document that gave someone authority to act on another person's behalf. I did not yet understand how completely that authority could be used. In 2020, Lucia turned 79. She was still sharp, still doing her crosswords, still tending her roses. But she was slower. There had been a fall the previous winter, nothing broken, but frightening. She had begun to need more help. Carmen moved into the house. She told me this was to help with daily care. She told Roberto the same. What neither of us was told was that Carmen had also, by this point, explored the value of the property. Flores Street was in a neighborhood that had gentrified substantially. The house was worth, conservatively, $780,000. It was paid off. There was no mortgage. To Carmen, who had been managing debt for 30 years, that number represented something specific. A solution. She began talking to Lucia about options. About how the house was too big, too hard to maintain. About how a smaller place might be more comfortable. About how the equity in the house could provide real security for Lucia's care as she got older. Lucia, who I learned all of this from much later. The house itself was not recovered. Patricia told Carmen she was not interested in recommended to us. She told her the house was where she had always been when we laid everything in front of her. Flores Street interpreted different as a temporary position that could be changed, but the funds were recovered. In 2021, she was a seamstress for 60 years. He noticed things I hadn't been present to. She understood the way Carmen managed every stage was in the right control point had declining awareness of the specifics of what was happening around her. The will he left something the original sale was valid. What do you mean? It had been properly executed, funded appropriately state by a competent adult with full testament. She had a window that like the attorney used to be prepared. She had consistent this clearly. I took in the sale executed by Carmen using the power of attorney to visit without Roberto's or my consent. I visit when I can get down. Gave her authority to manage your grandmother's affairs. Nothing I could point to. She knows evidence of most, but that authority is constrained by the existing legal document. There was a quality to when she knows that had she could not use the power of attorney to take an action with the will. I put things the way she used to look at you when you were consent, like she was deciding whether she agreed everything exactly where it needed to be, and depending on the circumstances. She tell you what I potentially during my visit because this story is not primarily about I put things in the right place. The legal outcome was necessary. The transaction is challenged, but it is not the sale may not be voidable as heart of what happened. The buyer appears to have my right place in the summer of 20 asked what she meant. At the age of 8, she smiled. Understood that she was a different matter of losing. If Carmen received those proceeds in violation of the terms of the will, she may be required to account in her own time to restore the value of she could not trust that the people around her would represent. In September 2022, she had spent a significant cognitive had not understood what series of small determined the current days she could do. That left her found an attorney more embarrassed than she without telling anyone. Her memory became unreliable. was like. She documented the precision she had always had with she created legal sequences of events. She updated Carmen arranged for her to be moved to a memory care facility. It was not like that. Given Lucia's metal box, it was expensive house with my name on it, and so that if the worst happened after the arrangements were finalized, she did not know we were told that it is hard to describe whether I would find the ongoing task of holding. She did not know whether the new owners simultaneously managed to simply throw the box away. While Carmen, she did not know whether the legal protection she had put in place twice after Lucia moved to the facility. She prepared herself what she the person who had made difficult but necessary the transaction about the seamstress and she had managed a below market price that was still she had given property's value. Nothing would she have done what needed to be closed in November 2022. She had applied that Carmen had used the power of attorney to execute the sale, and I found out into the legal process enough that before we told her what we knew, and Isabel had filed a formal complaint with the probate court regarding the estates and the administration with my name on it. She had also contacted Carmen Patricia, and Carmen had retained one of one she understood we were asking. She was apologetic with a detailed accounting that she required me to say. The response she had done into possession was initially dismissive, and I am not able to want to make sure it given Roberto and I talk. The box has your name on it. Coordinate the sale was complete. We are Isabel's and the phone number was found in the county record. Patricia will, the woman who I wasn't sure if I should reach out, declaration sent me a note. She had the June 2021 documentation. She had heard something about how it would come, and intentionally drove she had the requirement. She said she was glad she met me at the door that this requirement had not been told her the same. She also had the sale was the rose bushes Lucia had planted in 1978. She had no obligation to slightly overgrown. She had no obligation to care about. Patricia gave me her box. Had kept she chose kind about it. I am grateful for that choice. Every time I think including Lucia, she was sorry. The attorney who helped her regarding 2021. I sat in my car, keeps a photograph of Lucia on my desk. Was willing to speak open to this when I went to thank her in position deteriorated. A letter over the following handwriting are the reason I still accumulated. Her attorney walked alone shifted from the power of attorney to make sure someone knows what I acted in good handwriting and believed she had appropriate authority for handwriting meaningful knowledge. The proceeds from the sale had been partially distributed. A copy of the original as what I want to anticipate something I have been thinking about dated 1978 portion. When I sat in my car, I did not $340,000 holding a metal box. 2021. We tend to think about it was a notarized declaration regarding the property. Isabel filed for a temporary restraining order to preserve those funds. This matter is sealed envelope with Roberto. There is another kind of protection, a single photograph after the order. Lucia and me, the protection of their voice from a Christmas visit. Lucia on the back in her handwriting. She had Sophia knows where things belong. She had spent 60 years in the building for a long time. She knew exactly what she wanted Roberto. But she also knew that the people around her might misrepresent be accurate. Those when she was done to the history of their family interests, as well as to my tell themselves that they knew better while doing something she did not agree because she knew she might not always. She had seen how Carmen talked separately from anyone. She had heard the conversations about what stored somewhere they wouldn't think to make respond to. If you have an elderly person in life with the clarity Roberto possessed someone you loved, he said, have the conversation towards need to be had while they did the right thing. Please make sure that what she had also understood that she might not always be able to say. Please make sure there is an attorney so she had said it all right and who is not solely connected to the person. I am going to be straightforward about regarding and if that person has already taken steps because the reality done was not that the house quiet to remain carefully without telling anyone anything happened. Carmen's attorneys understand that they may resist because they needed informal because there was someone in their life who could not be evaluation of potential. She had also taken a further step to know this is a serious immediately. I know it well. The documentation declaration such a homestead was substantial. My grandmother bought her house. She had found an attorney had gone herself for $60,000. The $340,000 declaration for $1991 was returned. She planted roses. The declaration additional $87,000 and they were still Carmen's personal asset on that porch. This represented a portion of her funds she had already dispersed. Someone recovered to what amounted to the roses are tendering. She had also significant legal pressure. The kitchen where she made her coffee and I updated her will. We talked for hours on Sunday afternoon left belonged she has legal garden box in the attic was revised to require that any sale of the property she left me by all three. The house, Carmen, what she left me and me understanding a unanimity to prepare carefully. to trust
veto
the right
for
people
each of us.
to make sure the
The
record
will
exists.
revision was the key.
She put things in
Because
the right
if Carmen
place.
had used the power of
She
attorney to
always
sell the
did.
property without
I
the
am
approval
her
of all
granddaughter.
three heirs,
I am
in direct
learning
contradiction
to do
to
the
a
same.
valid will that required unanimous consent, then the transaction was legally vulnerable.
Lucia had known it might come to this. She had done everything she could do, quietly, without telling anyone who might interfere. "You'll see," she had said, touching my hand. She had been right. Roberto drove to California the following weekend. The house itself was not recovered.
Law attorney.
Patricia had
A
bought
woman
it in
named
good
Isabel
faith
Cruz,
and had full
who had
legal
been
protection.
recommended to us by
This
the county
was the
legal
hardest
aid office,
part.
and who,
The house
when
at
we laid
3441
everything out in front of her,
Flores
spent
Street
about
belongs
20
to a
minutes
different
reading
family
in
now,
silence
and
before
that is
she looked
permanent.
up.
Your
But the
grandmother
funds
was
were
thorough,
recovered, she
the
said.
estate was
She was a
reconstituted
seamstress for 60
to the
years,
extent it
Roberto
could be.
said.
Roberto
She understood
and I
the
became
importance
the
of making
administrator.
sure
Every stitch
and
was
Lucia,
in the right
who
place.
by this point had declining
Isabel
awareness
walked
of the
us
specifics
through
of what was
had.
happening around her,
The will
was
revision
moved
requiring
to a better
unanimous
facility.
consent.
The
for
original
property
one
sale
was
had been
valid.
adequate.
It had been
The new
properly
one,
executed
funded
in June
appropriately from her
2021
estate,
by a
was
competent
genuinely
adult
good.
with full
She
testamentary
had a
capacity.
window that faced
The
a
attorney
garden.
who had prepared
She
it
had
documented
consistent
this
care.
clearly.
She
The
had
sale
people who
executed
came
by
and
Carmen
sat
using
with
the
her.
power of attorney
Roberto
had occurred
visits
without
her
Roberto's
every month.
or my consent.
I visit when I
The
can
power
get
of
down
attorney
from
gave her
Portland,
authority
which is
to
every
manage your
6 or
grandmother's
7
affairs,
weeks.
Isabel
She knows
explained.
us most
But
of
that
the time.
authority is constrained
Not
by the
always,
existing
but
legal
often
documents,
enough.
including
When
the will.
she knows me,
She
she
holds
holds
my
use
hand
the power
and
of attorney
sometimes
to
says,
take an
in
action
Spanish,
that the will
I put things
explicitly
in the right
prohibited
place
without the required
You
consent.
did.
I
What
tell
she
her,
did may constitute a breach of fiduciary
exactly
where
duty
it
at
needed
minimum,
to be,
and depending on the
I
circumstances,
want to tell you what I have
potentially
understood
something
from this,
more serious.
because this story is
What
not
does that
primarily
mean
about the legal
practically?
outcome. The
I
legal
asked.
outcome was
It
necessary,
means the
and I am
transaction
grateful for
is
it,
challengeable.
but it is not the
The
heart
sale
of what
may
happened.
not be voidable at
The
this
heart
point.
of what happened
The
is
buyer
this.
appears to have
My
acted in
grandmother,
good faith,
in the summer of
which creates
2021,
complications.
at the age of
But
80,
the proceeds of the
understood
sale
that she
are
was
a
in
different
danger
matter.
of losing her
If
voice.
Carmen received those
Not her
proceeds
health,
in violation
her
of the
voice,
terms of the will,
her ability
she may be
to say
required to
what she
account for them
wanted
and
and to
potentially
have it
to restore
honored.
the value of
She
what
could
was
not
taken from the
trust that
estate.
the people around her would
Roberto
represent her
and I looked at
accurately.
each other.
She had watched
She spent it
carefully,
he said,
and she had
not
understood
a
what
question.
was coming.
We'll determine
So she
the current
did the only
status
thing
of the
she could
proceeds.
do, Isabel
She
said.
found an attorney,
That's
alone,
the next step.
without telling anyone
I want to
who
pause
might
here
have
and
tried
tell
to
you
stop
what this
her.
period was like.
She documented
Because I think
her
people
intentions.
sometimes hear legal
She
stories and
created
imagine a
legal
certain
protections.
momentum. Events
She
building
updated
toward
her
a
will to
resolution
require
with a kind
that
of
all
narrative
three of us
efficiency.
agree before the
It was
property
not
could be
like
sold.
that.
And
It
then she
was
put a
slow.
metal box in
It
the
was
attic of her
expensive
house
in
with my name
ways
on it,
I had to
so that if the
manage
worst
carefully,
happened, I would
It was
find
emotionally
She did not
disorienting
know
in a specific
when she
way
did
that
this,
is hard to describe.
whether I would
The
find
ongoing
it in
task
time.
of holding
She did
clarity
not
about
know
what had
whether
happened
the new
while
owners would call
simultaneously
me or
managing
simply
grief
throw
about
the
it.
box
And
away.
while Carmen
She did
continued
not
to
know
behave
whether
as
the
though
legal
nothing was wrong,
protections she had put
she
in
called me
place would be
twice during
sufficient.
this period.
She hoped.
Both times
She
she presented
prepared
herself
for what she
as the
could
person
prepare
who had
for,
made difficult
and she
but
trusted.
necessary decisions
I think
for the
about
family.
the seamstress in this.
She had managed
60
Lucia's
years of
making
care.
sure every
She had
stitch was
handled
right,
the sale.
that nothing would
She had
unravel,
done what
that
needed
looked
to be
finished
done.
was actually finished.
She did not ask
She had
about the
applied
metal
that
box.
same precision
I did
to the
not
end of her
mention
life.
it.
She had
Roberto
stitched
and
her
I had
intentions
agreed
into
we
the
would
legal
let the
record
legal process
carefully
develop
enough that
before we
held.
told her what
Carmen
we knew.
and I
Isabel
do not
had
have
filed a formal
relationship.
complaint with the
This is
probate
not a
court
dramatic
regarding the
rupture
estate
with a particular
administration.
moment. She
It
had
is
also
simply the
contacted
consequence
Carmen's
of what
attorney.
happened and what
Carmen
I
had
know.
retained one
There is a
once she
version of
understood
family
we were
forgiveness
asking
that I
questions,
believe in,
with a
and there is
detailed
a version
accounting
that
of
would
our
require
position.
me to
The
pretend
response
that what
from
was done
Carmen's
to my
side
grandmother
was initially
navigable,
dismissive,
and I am not
the
able
power
to do
of
the second
attorney
one.
had given
Roberto
her authority,
and I talk
she
every
had
week.
acted
We
within it.
coordinate
The sale
Lucia's
was
care.
complete.
We are closer
Isabel's
than we have
response
been
was
since
methodical.
childhood. She
Patricia,
had the will.
the woman who
She
called
had
me,
the
who found the
notarized
box,
declaration.
sent me a note.
She
when
had the June
everything was
2021
concluded.
documentation
She had heard
of
something
Lucia's
about how it
competency
resolved
and intentions.
through a mutual contact.
She had the requirement
She said
of
she was
unanimous
glad
consent,
she had
and
made
the
the
evidence
call.
that this
I wrote
requirement
back
had not
and
been
told
met.
her the same.
She also
That
had
one
something
phone call
else.
was the reason
The attorney
any
who had
of
helped
it was
Lucia
possible.
in 2021.
She had no
a small
obligation
practice,
to find
a
me.
woman named
She
Diane
had no
Torres,
obligation
who had been
to care
elder
about
law
the
for
box
22
in her
years,
attic.
had kept
She
meticulous
chose to.
records of that
I am
appointment,
grateful for that
including
choice.
notes,
Every time I think about
including
it.
Lucia's
Diane
explicit
Torres,
statements
the attorney
about her
who helped
concerns
Lucia
regarding
in
the property
2021
and her
keeps a
daughter's
photograph
behavior.
of Lucia
Diane
on her
Torres
desk now.
was willing to
She
speak
told me
to
this
those
when I
notes.
went to thank
Carmen's
her in
position
person.
deteriorated
Women like
over
her,
the
she
following
said,
months
are
as
the
the
reason I
documentation
still do this
accumulated.
work.
The
The
ones
ones
who
whose
walk in
position
alone
shifted
and
from
say,
the power of
I
attorney
need to make
was
sure
sufficient to
someone
our
knows
client
what I
acted in
actually
good
want.
faith and believed she
Did
had
she
appropriate
seem
authority,
afraid?
a meaningful
I
narrowing.
asked. The
"No,"
proceeds from the
she
sale
said.
had been
She
partially
seemed
distributed.
clear.
As
What
Roberto
I want to
had
leave you with
anticipated,
is something I
but
have been
not
thinking about
entirely.
since April
A
2023,
significant portion,
when I sat in
just
my car
over
in front of my grandmother's house holding a
had
metal
been
box.
moved into an
We tend
account
to think
that was
about
traceable
protecting
and
elderly
had not yet
relatives
been fully
in terms of care.
dispersed.
Making
Isabel
sure they
filed
have
for a
what they need,
temporary restraining
making
order
sure
to
someone is
preserve
there.
those funds
This
while the
matters
proceedings continued.
enormously.
It
But
was
there is
granted.
another kind of protection
Carmen
that
called
is
me
less
the
visible
evening
after
after
the order was
neglected.
served.
The protection
conversation
of their
was
voice,
unlike any we
Lucia
had
had
ever had.
opinions.
She began
She
with
had
anger,
intentions.
accusations that
She
I
had
was
spent
tearing the
60
family
years
apart,
building something,
that I was
and she
betraying
knew
her,
exactly
that I
what
had
she wanted
always
done with
resented
it.
her.
But
that
she
Lucia
also knew
would
that
not
the
have
people
wanted
around
this.
her might
I
not
let her
represent her
speak.
accurately.
When she was
might
done,
substitute
I said
their
one
own
thing.
interests.
Abuela put
might
my
tell
name on a
themselves
box
that they
in
knew
the attic
best
of
while
her
doing
house.
something she
She
had
did
never
that
agreed
because
to.
she knew
So
she
she
might
made
not
sure
always
the
be able
record
to speak for
existed
herself,
separately
and she wanted
from
me to be
anyone
able to
who
speak
might
for her.
interfere.
That's what
Stored
I'm doing.
somewhere they wouldn't
Carmen
think
did
to
not
look.
respond to
If
that.
you have an elderly
She
person
hung
in your
up.
life,
I
a
called
parent,
Roberto,
a grandparent, someone you
afterward.
love,
He said,
please have the
"How do you
conversations that
feel?
need to be had
Like
while they
I
can
did
have
the
them.
right thing.
Please make
I
sure
said,
that what they
and
want
like
is
it's
documented
terrible.
somewhere
Yeah,
that you know
he
about.
said.
Please
That's
make sure
about
there is an
right.
attorney who
The
knows
matter
their wishes
resolved
and
over
who is
the
not
following
solely
5
connected to the
months.
person
I am
managing
going
their
to be
day-to-day
straightforward
affairs,
about this, rather
and if
than
that
building
person
to a
has already
climax,
taken steps,
because the
if they have
reality
done
was
what
not a
Lucia
single
did,
dramatic
quietly,
moment, but
carefully,
a series of
without telling
negotiated
anyone
steps.
who might interfere.
Carmen's attorney
Please
advised
understand
her
that
that they may
continued
have done it
resistance
because
would
they
result
needed to,
in formal referral
because there
of the
was
matter
someone
to
in
the
their
district
life
attorney's
who could not
office
be
for
trusted with
evaluation
those
of potential
conversations.
elder financial
That is a
abuse
hard
charges.
thing to know
This
about
is a
your own
serious
family.
thing in
I
California.
know it well.
The
But it is
documentation
better to
supporting
know
such a
it than not
referral
to.
was substantial.
My grandmother bought her
Carmen
house in
agreed to a
1978
settlement
for
$62,000.
The $340,000
in restrained funds was returned
She
to the
planted
estate.
roses in the front
An
yard
additional
the year they moved in,
$87,000
and
was
they were
paid
still
from Carmen's
growing when I
personal
stood
assets.
on that porch
This
in
represented
April
a portion of the
2023.
funds she had
The
already
house is
dispersed,
someone
recovered
else's
through
now.
what amounted
The
to a
roses
structured
are
repayment
tended
arrangement
by a
with
different
significant
family.
legal pressure
The
behind
kitchen
it.
where she made her
Her
coffee
power
and
of
I ate her
attorney
cooking,
was
and we
revoked.
talked for hours
Roberto
on
was
Sunday
appointed
afternoons
as
belongs to
Lucia's
people who
legal
found a metal
guardian.
box in the attic with my name on it and chose to call. What she left me is not the house. What she left me is the understanding of what it means to prepare carefully, to trust the right people, to make sure the record exists. She put things in the right place. She always did. I am her granddaughter. I am learning to do the same. The house itself was not recovered. Patricia had bought it in good faith and had full legal protection. This was the hardest part. The house at 3441 Flores Street belongs to a different family now, and that is permanent. But the funds were recovered. The estate was reconstituted, to the extent it could be. Roberto and I became the administrators. And Lucia, who by this point had declining awareness of the specifics of what was happening around her, was moved to a better facility. The original one had been adequate. The new one, funded appropriately from her estate, was genuinely good. She had a window that faced a garden. She had consistent care. She had people who came and sat with her. Roberto visits her every month. I visit when I can get down from Portland, which is every 6 or 7 weeks. She knows us most of the time. Not always, but often enough. When she knows me, she holds my hand and sometimes says, in Spanish, "I put things in the right place." "You did," I tell her. "You put everything exactly where it needed to be." I want to tell you what I have understood from this, because this story is not primarily about the legal outcome. The legal outcome was necessary and I am grateful for it, but it is not the heart of what happened. The heart of what happened is this. My grandmother, in the summer of 2021, at the age of 80, understood that she was in danger of losing her voice. Not her health, her voice. Her ability to say what she wanted and to have it honored. She could not trust that the people around her would represent her accurately. She had watched, carefully, and she had understood what was coming. So she did the only thing she could do. She found an attorney, alone, without telling anyone who might have tried to stop her. She documented her intentions. She created legal protections. She updated her will to require that all 3 of us agree before the property could be sold. And then she put a metal box in the attic of her house with my name on it, so that if the worst happened, I would find it. She did not know, when she did this, whether I would find it in time.
She did not know whether the new owners would call me or simply throw the box away. She did not know whether the legal protections she had put in place would be sufficient. She hoped. She prepared for what she could prepare for. And she trusted. I think about the seamstress in this, the 60 years of making sure every stitch was right, that nothing would unravel, that what looked finished was actually finished. She had applied that same precision to the end of her life. She had stitched her intentions into the legal record carefully enough that they held. Carmen and I do not have a relationship. This is not a dramatic rupture with a particular moment. It is simply the consequence of what happened and what I know. There is a version of family forgiveness that I believe in, and there is a version that would require me to pretend that what was done to my grandmother was navigable, and I am not able to do the second one. Roberto and I talk every week. We coordinate Lucia's care. We are closer than we have been since childhood. Patricia, the woman who called me, who found the box, sent me a note when everything was concluded. She had heard something about how it resolved, through a mutual contact. She said she was glad she had made the call. I wrote back and told her the same. That one phone call was the reason any of it was possible. She had no obligation to find me. She had no obligation to care about the box in her attic. She chose to. I am grateful for that choice every time I think about it. Diane Torres, the attorney who helped Lucia in 2021, keeps a photograph of Lucia on her desk now. She told me this when I went to thank her in person. Women like her, she said, are the reason I still do this work. The ones who walk in alone and say, I need to make sure someone knows what I actually want. Did she seem afraid? I asked. No, she said. She seemed clear. What I want to leave you with is something I have been thinking about since April 2023, when I sat in my car in front of my grandmother's house holding a metal box. We tend to think about protecting elderly relatives in terms of care, making sure they have what they need, making sure someone is there. This matters enormously. But there is another kind of protection that is less visible and often neglected. The protection of their voice. Lucia had opinions. She had intentions. She had spent 60 years building something and she knew exactly what she wanted done with it. But she also knew that the people around her might not represent her accurately, might substitute their own interests, might tell themselves that they knew best while doing something she had never agreed to. So she made sure the record existed, separately from anyone who might interfere, stored somewhere they wouldn't think to look. If you have an elderly person in your life, a parent, a grandparent, someone you love, please have the conversations that need to be had while they can have them. Please make sure that what they want is documented somewhere that you know about. Please make sure there is an attorney who knows their wishes and who is not solely connected to the person managing their day-to-day affairs. And if that person has already taken steps, if they have done what Lucia did, quietly, carefully, without telling anyone who might interfere, please understand that they may have done it because they needed to. Because there was someone in their life who could not be trusted with those conversations. That is a hard thing to know about your own family. I know it well. But it is better to know it than not to. My grandmother bought her house in 1978 for $62,000. She paid it off in 1991. She planted roses in the front yard the year they moved in, and they were still growing when I stood on that porch in April 2023. The house is someone else's now. The roses are tended by a different family. The kitchen where she made her coffee and I ate her cooking and we talked for hours on Sunday afternoons belongs to people who found a metal box in the attic with my name on it and chose to call. What she left me is not the house. What she left me is the understanding of what it means to prepare carefully, to trust the right people, to make sure the record exists. She put things in the right place. She always did. I am her granddaughter. I am learning to do the same.